Above all other circuits, the Nurburgring has a history and a tradition which is intertwined with that of motorsport itself. The Green Howler, Jackie Stewart so memorably described it, has been thrilling and terrifying drivers in equal measure since 1927, and any event here remains one of the greatest spectacles and challenges on the sporting calendar. And while the full Nordschleife is only used for selected racing events, the Modern Grand Prix track remains in full use as an FIA Grade 1 circuit with a full roster of events including DTM, GT Masters, and of course the Formula 1 Grand Prix. Today it will be our drivers who will have to try and master its tricky stadium section as well as the long sweeping Schumacher S's. And well, welcome then to round 7 of the WSRL IndyCar series presented by Sim Racing for Simpletons YouTube channel and the WC91 Liveries here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. My name is Sebastian Boscher Williams. In the virtual production booth tonight, we have once again Dustin, Ollis, and well, my partner in crime in the WSRL IndyCar commentary booth is alongside me once again, Randall. Welcome along to another race. And well, 1 week ago we had Belle. It was fairly adventurous, I think we can all agree. And we've headed across the Atlantic Ocean. And this race promises just to be so interesting. I mean, who doesn't like the Nurburgring GP circuit?
I know I love it. This is one of my favorite tracks. It's a very technical circuit. The challenge this week, just as high as it was last week at Belle Isle, though completely different. Instead of walls that you have to avoid in a bumpy track, it's very, very technical corners where it's easy to lose a lot of time if you don't get it right.
And today, I think it's all going to be about overtaking, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, Randall, but, you know, this track offers so much potential in terms of making those overtaking moves. You've got, you know, the run down towards turn 1, you've got the Ford hairpin a few corners in turn 6, I do believe, and then of course we've got the sort of well, it's called the BES or the Bez Wek chicane, the quicker chicane that everybody seems to prefer, and that might provide a little bit of an opportunity to maybe go side by side as we ride on board, rising up the hill towards that very chicane. But lots of opportunities here today, Randall, to get those overtaking moves in.
Yeah, we might even see some moves coming into turn 10 after the Michael Schumacher S. If somebody gets it wrong, coming through the S could open up the door for an opportunistic pass going into turn 10. Right now, we're on board with Kwok Min. He's coming down into turn 1, a very, very tight right-hander where the camber changes right at the corner apex. You can easily oversteer on exit, and then a kind of drifting wide turn 2 where you're just kind of using the throttle to turn the car, and then a very tricky turn 3 into the Mercedes arena. He runs a little bit wide on exit there. You kind of want to have a late apex to open up the entry to the right-hander that follows, and then a blast down to turn 5. You're going to have to sacrifice your exit here again to set up the entry for turn 6. A very slow right-hander that opens up down a pretty decent wide open throttle section down to the Goodyear hairpin. And there's 3 or 4 different lines that are faster here, but you really want to make sure that you maximize your apex and drive off and use all the track. Then easily flat through the Schumacher S's once you have some heat in the tires on the blast up to turn 10, and it's going to be who's the bravest going into that corner at turn 10, getting late on the brakes, and then again through turn 11 down this very long full throttle section. With this curve, it's easily flat out. It's basically a straightaway, and the drive up to that chicane that you mentioned earlier, you're going to be braking very late. You can carry oodles of speed through there. Just got to make sure you keep it on the island. And then the last corner, very tight hairpin to the right that opens up on that long front straightaway. Very important to get that last corner right to get a good lap time and to set up your next lap.
It most definitely is. Turn 15 or Coca-Cola curve. And we're going to be talking about that corner a lot in commentary. Kunin did not improve on that lap that we watched him on board. Was up through the first 2 sectors. That's sideways from Bobby Flack there, exiting turn 14, really getting all crossed up. Very Pato O'Ward-esque at the wheels. Not necessarily the quickest way to drive an IndyCar in iRacing, but Flack heads up into 9th place. And I noticed this when you were talking us through the lap, Randall. Christian Gritzko, one of the quickest drivers at the moment, out on the primaries. He was in a league of his own in practice. For most of the practice session, was running a second quicker than the rest of the pack. I think if he was finally sort of 7/10 clear of the field once everybody had set their laps on the board. But Christian Gritzko, feeling that he has enough pace to go onto the primaries, he's going to be a real force to be reckoned with in this race today, I think.
As long as he can keep the car clean on the start, if he's going to run with the primaries, then he'll be fine, and he'll have something to attack with later in the race if he finds himself trying to pass somebody for the win. The Reds do fall off very quickly around this track. There's lots of high-speed corners, and the Reds just don't take the heat very well. So should be expecting to see the drivers minimize their time on the Reds and maximize their time on the Blacks. Now, the fuel tank has enough for 13 laps around this track. So, and the race is 30 laps long. So if you can save 4 laps of fuel, in theory, I think you could do this in a one-stopper. But honestly, I think it's going to be slower than doing a short stint on the Reds and then 2 full stints on the Blacks.
Of course, you have to run both tyre compounds, so at some point they're going to have to go on what seems to be those dreaded red wool tyres. Qualifying then drawing to a close. 12 drivers already getting their lap times in. Joshua Benjamin has left it late in the day to get his lap time on the board. Rounds the Mercedes, or heads around the Mercedes arena into turn 3. Quickly followed by the right-hander of turn 4. Be careful not to run wide on the exit. You'll see many drivers struggling, playing with the off-track limits there. Turn 5. What an amazing section of corners we have. A little bit of understeer creeping in for Joshua Benjamin. A little under rotation of that front right tyre. won't be really wanting that, as he won't be able to get another lap time in. This is his only opportunity, so high pressure, high stakes tactics from Joshua Benjamin up through the Schumacher S's. And Randall, in practice, you know, you were sort of talking about where you were thinking the drivers were going to use the push to pass, and you were saying, well, it's mostly going to be on the apex, sorry, on the exit of turn 7 of the Dunlop hairpin. But is it going to be a little bit of a challenge to keep the car flat heading through the Schumacher S's when you have that extra power, that push to pass enabled?
It will be difficult if you're following another car. Dirty air might play a role, and you might find yourself having to lift. So that'll come into play. But once the tires are up to temperature, even on the blacks, it's easily flat through the Schumacher S's. It just takes a little bit of bravery. And once you do it once, you should be pretty confident that the car is going to stick after that. I tried using it in a few different places. Out of turn 11, you would think that it would be a really good place to use it. But you just don't spend enough time in the power band, and you get up into the high end of the car's speed limit, and it just loads down with drag, and it just doesn't really go anywhere. I got a lot more time coming out of turn 7 just based on the fact that you're going through that Schumacher S. You're keeping that power up through that entire section, and it just seems to be faster.
Crucial for Christian Gritsko there, being pipped to the post by Q Nin. So Gritsko will start in 5th place. His qualifying has drawn to a close, and Joshua Benjamin did not manage to get a lap time in. So here you go then. Here is your grid for round 7 of the WSRL IndyCar Series, and Brian Long will start on pole position. 1 minute 36.223 was the pole time. Justin Barrera missed out on pole by 5 thousandths of a second, but he'll still line up on the front row. Ricardo Serrano leads row 2 alongside Q Nin. Christian Gritsko starts 5th. He's the first driver, though, on the black wall on the primary tyres. He is a dark force in this race today. David Stevenson starts alongside Christian in 6th place. Aubrey Condell starts in 7th alongside Brian Hotham in 8th place. Barry Cochran in 9th, and Bobby Flack rounds out your top 10. Now Alexander then just missing out on that illustrious top 10. He'll start in 11th alongside Mike Weir in 12th place. Mike Braun starts 13th. Joshua Benjamin starts 14th. The 7th row of the grid, I should say, have not set a qualifying lap time. So both Braun and Benjamin Randall are a little bit of an unknown quantity heading in to this race. We don't know what their pace is like. And before we get the race underway, Randall, talk us through the championship standings.
So right now, Brian Hotham with an 18-point lead over Justin Barrera, and then 2nd through 4th covered by only 3 points. So there's a lot to play for there, still on the podium. Up to 72 points still available over these 2 races. So all the way down to 15th is technically still mathematically eligible, but in reality, if you're Josh Benjamin or higher on that board, you still have a chance. But that podium still yet to be decided.
And interestingly, Brian Hotham has had a fairly average qualifying, starts in 8th place, so almost effectively mid-pack. Won't be helping his championship chances, so maybe it's an opportunity for everybody behind him just to catch up a little bit after today's race is said and done. Pace car pulls away then, and we get ready to go racing. And Long, he can decide when we get this race underway. Unlike Belle, we don't have to worry about a full pace lap. We just have the back straight and the chicane, and then we can get underway. And I am so looking forward to this race today. It promises to be absolutely breathtaking from start to finish. As they round Coca-Cola Corner, the final turn, we will get ready to go racing here today. And it will be Brian Long deciding when we get underway. He goes a little bit late, might give an advantage to Serrano behind. Justin Barrera's been caught off guard. Serrano makes his way through, has that inside line for turn one. Kunin having a little bit of a look as well. Oh, contact made there, and spinning off goes Ricardo Serrano. Was it contact, or did he simply make a mistake under braking? I am not sure. Bobby Flack there rounding turn two. Oh, three wide down the inside goes Stevenson, gets the move done. Sorry, that's Cundell there, still side by side in the background. Brian Hotham making his way past Barrera. Somebody's going backwards. That's Stevenson. So drama on the opening lap. That's a very damaged car. Oh, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars involved there. They all go, or they all make their way down towards turn 5. I think that was Cochrane, Braun, Stevenson. Oh, and he's lost the rear there, Randall. Oh, and he's taken a few cars with him. And, oh, that's not what you wanted to see. Oh, it just keeps on getting worse.
And then Ricardo Serrano coming in there trying to make up some of those spots that he had lost on turn 1 and just gets involved in that situation in a way you don't want to be. And it just makes a bad situation worse. It looks like Stevenson was getting back on the throttle, trying to get back into the race pace and just lit up the rear tires. It's very easy to do there, especially offline where there's a lot of marbles, and that just led to absolute bedlam there exiting the Mercedes arena.
We see Bobby Flack. What's happened to Neil Alexander, I wonder, heading towards the braking zone of turn 10. Oh, a little bit of too much ambition, over-adhesion heading to the apex there. And Neil Alexander quickly finds himself facing the wrong way. Oh, is Neil Alexander once again, in fact, driving backwards? I think he's been facing backwards more than forwards on this opening lap. And he will rejoin the circuit. I wonder if we're going to see that 27 car head to the pits fairly quickly. I just want to draw your attention to the timing stand. Christian Gritzko currently in second place. The man that started on the primary tyres really benefiting from the opening craziness, certainly Serrano's mistake heading in to turn 1. But Brian Long, Randall, has already used 4 push-to-pass uses. I mean, he's used 4, and we haven't even been racing for 10 miles yet. So Long really feeling the pressure by Gritzko and wanting to stay outside of that 1 second range, wanting to not give as much or any slipstream to Gritzko as possible. But Long really going aggressive in the early phases of this race.
I think he probably saw the incident that happened behind him, or the incidents that happened behind him, and decided now was the best time to make a gap happen, and started hitting that push to pass. He's on it again, as we see Christian Gritzko also on it, trying to run him down. Justin Barrera here down to 6th behind Brian Hotham. Could be seeing a move coming up. He's going to back off into the chicane, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see him stick his nose out on the entry to turn 1.
Brian Long once again on the push to pass, not surprisingly sets the fastest lap. Surprisingly though, Christian Gritzko betters it by a few hundredths of a second or so. Kunin running in 3rd. Looked a little bit wide through turn 1 for Christian Gritzko as we rejoin that battle for 5th place between Hotham and Barrera. Barrera trying to make his way up into the top 5 after, well, a fairly disastrous start for Justin Barrera. He started in 2nd, currently finds himself down in 6th place. And heartbreakingly for Barrera, the 2 drivers ahead of him are on that primary tyre. Long once again on the push to pass. Are you sure he's not trying to run it down as quickly as possible? If you look, I mean, many drivers haven't even touched their push to pass button yet. But Long has already used it 7 times as Benjamin gets past Mike Weir. So that's a swap for places. So does Justin Barrera. He manages to get past Hotham. So Justin Barrera up into 5th. But is it fair to say, Randall, that we are expecting today the primary tyres to be the better race tyre? And so if you are Barrera facing 2 primary, or was facing the prospect of having 2 cars on the primaries up ahead, a fairly daunting task?
Well, we saw Justin Barrera last week is pretty much an expert at saving fuel, so he could just be saving fuel and taking it easy on those red sidewalls
Oh, sorry to cut across you there, Gritzko. Sideways heading out of Coca-Cola corner. Sorry to cut across you there, Randall. What has happened to Barry Cochran, though, I wonder, Randall?
Looks like the entrance to turn 10 comes in just a little hot. Another driver having, like you said, ambition above adhesion and just carries too much speed on the entry there to turn 10 and loops it around. Now, Christian Gritzko feeling lots of pressure from Q-Nin, who is on those alternate tires. The red sidewalls is going to have more grip, but they're slowly, not so slowly, going to start fading away here over the next couple laps. So Q needs to get this done now and try to pull a gap over Christian if he can make this move happen.
Gritzko then got all squirrely heading out Coca-Cola curve. That's put him on the back foot, allowed Q-Nin to close right up 0.2 of a second, separating your second and third place drivers as they head towards the hairpin for the fourth time. Gritzko using that push to pass. You can tell by the little red box there next to what tyre compound they are on. So Gritzko wanting that extra power on the exit up through the Schumacher S's just to defend a little bit. Brian Long, I think it's officially now, has used all of his push-to-pass uses. It's taken him 4 laps, which is a fairly impressive feat. But I wonder, will this aggressive strategy come back to haunt him in the latter stages of the race, or has he played a little bit of a strategic blinder? I wonder. Q-Nin getting the chicane all right, starting to once again find himself right behind Christian Gritzko, getting a whole heap of understeer though through Coca-Cola curve as they cross the start-finish line. Gritzko a tenth quicker than Q-Nin. Aubrey Condell in the background is a second quicker than Q-Nin and Christian Gritzko on that last lap. And Aubrey Condell, you know, I referred to Christian Gritzko earlier on, Randall, being the dark horse of this race, but I think Aubrey Condell might have just taken that title because, you know, you never really, especially at the early phases of the race, want to be overstressing the tyres, and that's exactly what Gritzko did by almost sort of spinning it. He did the, you know, the classic fully on the brake to arrest any slide. And actually, that could have damaged his tyres long term. So Aubrey Condell could be in a pretty good position right about now.
Yeah, if you were able to start on the primaries and carry and have a decent qualifying position still, that's definitely an advantage for you. You can wait till the very end of the race to run those reds. I suspect we'll see the likes of Brian Long in maybe even as early as this lap. But I think his use of the push to pass, it was a strategic call from him, and I think it had the desired effect. It really caused Christian Gritzko to have to hustle to try to keep up with him, and we saw what happened. Eventually, he was just over the edge and had an instant issue coming out of the last corner and was able to give Brian Long a big gap, even though it's starting to slowly dwindle. Brian Long is definitely going to be feeling those tires, though, driving them the way he has been, using all that push to pass. So we should see him in pretty soon.
As you pointed out, Randall, in qualifying, the tank is good for about 13 laps if you're not fuel saving. We're just ticking on to lap 6, so heading up to just under halfway through a racing stint. And everybody holding off coming in to the pits, especially any of the drivers on the alternate tyres. Brian Hotham still around about behind Justin Barrera. Barrera not being able to catch Aubrey Condell and actually starting to fall once again into the clutches of Brian Hotham. And I think, will we now see, Randall, the emergence and the crossover point when the primary tyres become the quicker compound once the alternate tyres start to drop off? You can actually tell that by Gritzko. He's got that gap down to under 3 seconds already through the opening sector or 2 as he just rounds the hairpin. So he's gained about 5/10, you'd have to say, in that first sector alone. So the primary tyres starting now to look like they are the tyres to be on, especially overused alternates.
And bad news turns into worse news for Brian Long. He's dealing with some lap traffic now, so that's going to cause him to slow down even more, and he's not going to be able to make as many bold moves on those old reds now that he's driven some of the good off of them to get around some of the traffic. So he has to hope for the best, hope he catches. And as I mentioned, he's coming into the pits now, so trying to get off of those reds. There's a unique strategy since they're using a fixed setup that they have to start on full fuel. So having the reds on full fuel will make them wear a little bit faster, but it'll make this pit stop much shorter whenever he switches to the blacks.
Along our first entrance to the pits is Alexander goes very wide through turn 1, and you're right, Long will have a short pit stop because he hasn't used full fuel. He's got about 23 laps or so to deal with. That will be 2 stops, so Long gonna be on that 3-stop strategy today. I think I'm getting my maths right. It's far too late to be doing maths at the moment.
He's gonna be on a 2-stop strategy still.
I thought I was 1 pit stop out. Thank you very much, Randall. That's why it's, as I said, never do maths at 2:30 in the evening, but certainly join us in watching some IndyCar action. So Long is back out in 8th place. Then he's got Weir up ahead of him, but he's slotted Randall into a really nice gap. He's got Braun behind, but he should be easily able to outpace Braun. Braun's still on some used alternate tyres. So yeah, Long can just cruise. He can bring the tyres in how he wants to. I mean, that strategy so far really working for our long-term race leader.
And now we'll have to see what Gritsko's pace is like. It looks like the gap back to Kunin has kind of stabilized, but we'll see if that opens up anymore. Brian Hotham now dealing with Joshua Benjamin. A lot of pressure there. Brian Hotham on the primaries, Benjamin on those alternates. So in theory, Benjamin's still a little bit faster, but those reds are really going to start hurting. If you haven't overdriven them, you still have some good in them, but they're really going to start hurting over the next couple laps.
Yeah, likewise. I'm surprised that we haven't seen any drivers head into the pits on those alternate tyres. Kunin, then the leader on the alternate tyres, goes for another lap, rounds turn 2. And that gap between himself and Christian Gritsko that was once, a couple of tenths of a second, they were nose cone to gearbox a few laps ago, is now up to 2.5 seconds. And Aubrey Kendall starting to close in, but that gap's bigger than it was a few laps ago as well. So I wonder if Aubrey Kendall has made a little bit of a mistake. Barrera, he's starting to find a little bit of pace out there. As what has happened to Brian Long? Oh, I think he's had a little bit of a spin heading towards turn 1. And we have a look at the replay, and Randall will take us through it.
You see heavy in the brakes there, and it looks like he just gets the right rear. Looks like it wanted to lock up just a little bit as he started to give the wheels some input and hadn't backed out of the brake enough. Still dealing with cold tires. That's the trick to these black sidewall tires. They still take a lap and a half, 2 laps, so sometimes 2.5 or 3 laps, depending on the track, to come up to temperature. The high-speed corners around here will definitely help them, but after 1 lap, they're not completely in the working range. They're warm enough to feel tacky and like you can push them, but you see you have issues like Brian had there. Coming into a braking zone, when you turn the wheel, you'll end up locking up one of the rear tires.
Brake then for Brian Long. It's going to be hard push to keep the race lead when everybody else has come into the pits. Such was the time loss from that spin through the chicane. We go on board with Joshua Benjamin. Nobody heads into the pits. Lap time starting to fall. The fastest lap time in the race so far is Christian Gritsko, 1 minute 37.1. For context, Kunin last lap of 38.2. Benjamin sends it to the inside, late braking on Brian Hotham. Benjamin gets to that inside line, almost contact between the nose cone and the rear right tyre. But Benjamin makes his way up into 5th, and well, that sort of disproven my theory that the alternate tyres were going off and weren't providing as much grip as the primary tyres, because Joshua Benjamin is on his starting compound, is on the alternates, and that was a very nice move heading into turn 1.
Well, we heard from Justin Barrera last week in the interview that the black sidewall tires can be a little difficult to keep in the temperature range that you want to keep them in if you're not pushing them. So it could be a symptom of Brian Hotham not pushing those tires enough to keep them fired up. And Joshua Benjamin finding a little bit of grip out of those red sidewalls where other cars have been struggling. So he's obviously taking care of them. But even still, 9 laps is a long time to run on these red sidewalls around a track like this. So an impressive move. And what was really impressive about that move was the authority with which he got back to the throttle and was able to complete that pass after the apex. That's the tricky spot where a lot of people get caught out with the rear spinning up whenever you apply that throttle.
Really impressive move I'm just trying to do, I know it's dangerous, a little bit of mental maths in my head of when might these alternate drivers and the primary drivers as well be able to come into the pits and only have to stop once more in this race. If we say you've got about 13 laps of fuel in the tank without fuel saving, drivers starting to approach the 1 minute 39, so the pace is not really out on the circuit. Tyres are proving to be a little bit difficult. Barrera slow to the apex through turn 1. Benjamin and Hotham both catching him at a rapid rate of knots. This is Brian Long making his way back past Mike Braun for the second time of asking, heads into turn 1 where it all came undone for him a few laps ago. But Randall, if you were fuel saving around here, how many laps do you think you could get from a tank? We've got 20 laps to go in this race. It still seems a little bit far-fetched that if you came in now, you could get to the end on one tank of fuel, but we're not too far away from that becoming reality.
So you would need to save 4 laps over the length of the race, so you would try to split it in half and save 2 laps per stint, which is certainly possible, and that might be what we see Justin Barrera doing. I'm just not convinced that it's the fastest strategy. I think taking the extra pit stop and pushing your tires is going to be faster. So we'll see if it works out. Maybe some of these drivers got caught in that early incident or slowed down by that early incident, decided to call an audible and change their strategy to make the best of a bad situation, which could be ultimately faster for them in the long run. But I would be very surprised if anybody tries to run just a one-stopper. But I'm also surprised that the drivers that started on the Reds are still out here and didn't run a very short first stint the way Brian Long did.
Tune in into the 1 minute 38.8, so really struggling out there for pace. Barrera under pressure from Benjamin, Benjamin under pressure from Hotham. This is a tasty battle out on the circuit as they head towards turn 1. Around the outside, tries Benjamin. Barrera, though, heads to the inside, gets that covered off. I thought Joshua Benjamin was simply going to drive around Justin Barrera like he didn't exist. So much grip differential between 4th and 5th place. Hotham, though, getting a little bit interested in this battle. Benjamin made that move, of course, down towards turn 1 a few laps ago on Brian Hotham. And I'm sure Hotham would like to enact a little bit of revenge. But Justin Barrera still leads this pack through turns 6. We go up towards the hairpin. A potential overtaking opportunity you see on that last lap. Hotham gained 4, almost 5/10 of a second over Benjamin. And that was just of the... I don't know, was it a disagreement towards turn 1? I mean, did Barrera brake earlier than Benjamin, or did Joshua Benjamin simply just try and brake as late as possible? Because I've never seen a successful move around the outside, and well, it's fair to say, Randall, we almost saw there.
Well, it didn't look like one necessarily outbroke the other one. Joshua Benjamin took a very wide line. He wanted to leave plenty of space for Justin, which is understandable, but he just left too much space, and the distance that they had to cover going around that corner was massively different. Justin Barrera had a much shorter distance to go with taking that inside line, and Joshua Benjamin hanging it all the way on the outside. He had to go just so much further. So if he's going to try to do the same thing here on the outside, he needs to keep it a little bit tighter.
Benjamin gaining on Barrera. This time it chooses the inside line. And Barrera almost concedes defeat. Hotham has a little bit of a look to the inside as well. That's the lap car getting out of the way. That's the 27 of Neil Alexander. Neatly gets off the circuit. Benjamin then leads Barrera. Hotham could not make it through. So Justin Barrera only losing 1 position. Oh, almost running into the back of Benjamin through turns 3. Oh, how close was that to disaster there. Thought we were about to see a fairly big incident once again just on the exit of the Mercedes arena. But they all managed to avoid any issues. Lap 12 then, so we're starting to get up to our pit stop window. It's going to be crucial just who has been fuel saving. And actually, in fact, did that look like Barrera was a little bit cautious there, a little bit almost like he was fuel saving, because Benjamin was a lot later under brakes.
Yeah, Barrera definitely looks like he's fuel saving, and we'll know for sure here in about a lap and a half if any of these drivers stay out past the end of lap 13. You know they're on a fuel saving strategy and you're going to try for the one stopper. Justin Barrera did it last week. We could see it here again.
If you were a driver out on the circuit at the moment and fuel saving was your priority, how are you doing that? I know it's a fixed setup. Does the fixed setup allow you to change the engine map, or is it all about lifting and coasting?
Yeah, you can change the engine map. Justin was mentioning it last week. He was going a lot of the time in map 5, which is maximum fuel saving. They have a couple different full fuel maps that allow them to alter the throttle curve a little bit for road, and three different or four different fuel saving modes. So right now I suspect that Justin Barrera is in one of those fuel saving modes and doing lifting and coasting. So he's able to baby those reds to make them have a little bit more grip through the length of this run and save fuel at the same time.
Lap 13 then, so who will be heading into the pits at the end of this lap, and who has managed to save a little bit of fuel? Just a reminder that the fastest lap of this race is a 37.1. Christian Gritzko almost matching that 4 tenths behind, but Justin Barrera, as you saw on those graphics a few moments ago, last lap a 1 minute 40.1, so Barrera some 3 seconds off the pace. There you go. You can just see the pace differential between Gritzko and Barrera, the difference between used primaries and used alternate tyres. Barrera really struggling, seems to be one of the drivers that really pushed those tyres on the opening few laps. Randall as he has a huge snap of oversteer, manages just about to keep it out of the barrier, but I was going to say Barrera struggling for grip certainly was almost saw his race fall before his eyes as Christian Gritzko heads to pit lane. That's surprising. I thought Gritzko would be able to last a lap or so more, but this is what happened to Justin Barrera and Randall. What happened to the 419 car?
Looks like he just came in a little bit too hot, was probably trying to do a little bit of extra fuel saving and wanted to save the braking for the last second and just got it a little too late. Snap oversteer, a big correction, and an overcorrection sending him off into the runoff. Good for the drivers, nice big runoff area there at the exit of turn 10. Not so great for the fans who had to sit much further away from the action, but he's able to get out of there with minimal damage. Hopefully he didn't do any damage to the floor of that car. And now we see your initial race leader, Brian Long, in 5th as the pit cycle starts. We'll see where he comes out. He's now 4.3 seconds behind Christian Gritzko, who just came out of the pits. You can see that gap close a little bit as Gritzko is still dealing with cold tires, but it looks like Gritzko now has this race in hand.
Gritzko looking good, as you mentioned, for his race win here today. Kunin and Hotham and Barrera are all out on their original starting tyres. Kunin maybe could challenge Gritzko if he can get towards that one-stop strategy. And interestingly, all the drivers coming into the pits, they've put on the alternate tyre, so Kunin does come in. He only managed 1 lap extra of fuel. I'm just trying to sort of work out in my head. So Aubrey Cadell, he's come in and put up the alternate tyre, so stands to reason, Randall, that he's going to be running a short middle stint and then come in and put and strap on a set of primaries once again. Gritzko heading up to the back of Barrera. Barrera has not stopped in this race, so hasn't, or so, yeah, that's English. So too is Brian Hotham. Gritzko, though, much better drive off the final corner. Coca-Cola curve gets that move easily done before turn 1. Oh, does Gritzko try and chance his luck? Does he try to get past Neil Alexander? Has Alexander seen him in his mirrors? Thankfully for your net race leader, Alexander was on the ball. But Gritzko really adding to the risks of his race lead. But Barrera, Randall, once again has gone for another lap, so he might be able to fuel save enough to get on to finish the race on 1 more stop. But I am surprised that the amount of drivers that have come in and put the alternate tyres on.
Well, they do have to run the alternate tires for at least 1 stint, so they could just be taking a short stint on those reds in the middle. The car does refuel and change tires at the same time, so you get a bit of free refueling. So what will be really interesting to know is how many of them took fuel on, or how much fuel they took on changing those reds, because you could fill up probably 5 or 6 laps for free with the tire change. So that would be just enough to get a run done on the Reds. They could go full fuel on that pit stop too and have that extra grip available with the extra weight and then come in for a very short final stop. So based on the pit lane times though, it looks like they are taking minimum fuel and just getting those tires on and taking enough fuel for their red tire stint. So I don't think we'll see many one-stop strategies. Justin Barrera probably the only one, and we should see him coming in anytime now.
Ryan Hotham comes in to the pits, but Barrera stays out almost into the 1 minute 41s, though 1 minute 40.999 for Barrera. So the pace isn't there on the tyres, but the fuel mileage certainly is. In fact, he's so fuel conscious, he hasn't touched his push to pass uses yet. Unlike the driver behind him, Brian Long, who has used all of his uses so far in today's race. So Barrera, though, starting to be caught by Long. But Brian Long, those tyres are sort of mid-stint. He came in on lap 6. We're now on lap 16, so 10-lap-old tyres for Brian Long. I mean, they will be much grippier than Justin Barrera's really second-hand alternate tyres. But Long's tyres aren't that new. They aren't that, you know, fresh, unlike, you know, Gritzko's or Kunin's or even Aubrey Kendall. So, you know, this sort of early stop for Brian Long really has not worked for him, has it?
Well, the stint length on maximum fuel for this series only being 13 laps, the black tires only really start to fall off about that time. So it's not too bad to be running them out, and you can really push them with the limited fuel tank that they have. So he's in a decent position here. He will have to pit within a few laps, but I think he'll ultimately jump Justin Barrera. But once Barrera has to come back out, he's still going to have to fuel save unless he somehow manages to pull another lap, and he does not. You see him pulls in the pits. So he's going to have to save 1 lap of fuel on those primaries, but he'll be able to push a little bit more. But I think Brian Long is going to have his number at the end of the day.
Interesting strategies playing themselves out. Aubrey Kendall on the push to pass, tries to make his way past Brian Long. Late braking for Aubrey Kendall. And that's a move, and he is now up into second spot. Alternate tyres versus primaries, though. I have to put that into perspective. So on different strategies at this phase of the race, but new, fresher alternates certainly be old primary tyres. Justin Barrera then does change to the primaries. He should be going to the end of the race. You're right, he will have to do a little bit of fuel saving, but surely after that mammoth first stint, that's a fairly easy task for Justin Barrera. Weir, though, just sneaks his way through, so another driver for Barrera to contend with. So your closest battle on the circuit is between Long and Kendall, as you do see Justin Barrera head out of the pit. Gritzko, another driver favouring to use his push to passes fairly liberally. 7 uses so far in 17 laps. I'm surprised we don't tend to see that much sort of push to pass usage until the sort of the end of the race, or if you're in a battle. But you know, both of our race leaders so far really wanting to use it as much as possible. Do you think Gritzko knows that maybe Barrera might be a little bit of a threat to his race and wants to maximize the amount of pace he's got in this stint?
I think he's just really feeling these tires right now, so he's going to make his best lap times while the tires are in their best working range. Honestly, I don't think he's going to be threatened by Barrera at all. The fuel saving strategy is probably going to get Justin a top 5 out of this, but the pace that he has to run is just so slow. I don't think that it's worth it. The pit lane time here on this track is not very long. The pit entry is tricky, but it's one you can attack and carry a lot of speed through and up to the line and actually shave off a bit of lap time up until that pit limiter line. Once you get on the limiter and pull into the box, you're only on pit lane for about 35 seconds. So if you're giving up 3 seconds a lap over what Justin pulled a 16-lap stint, that's more than 35 seconds. And Ricardo Serrano looks like he's having a lot of problems there, and that car has a lot of damage.
A lot of damage. Oh, and he's parked perpendicular to the racing line. Thankfully, escapes back to the pit. I'm also seeing Barrera's off the track. I'll let you know on that, but snap of oversteer Such a huge incident for Riccardo Serrano, and Serrano, the championship leader a few rounds ago, has just not had the luck that he needs. And well, if Martin Brundle would say if he didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. And another man I think we can add to that is what has happened to Justin Barrera. So that's not a replay, that is his second stop. I wonder, did he... I don't know, if he would have got a penalty, he would have had to have come through the pit lane, because you don't tend to get a time penalty for speeding in the pit. So I'm a little bit confused as to why Barrera's into the pits once again. He certainly would have taken fuel. He's still got the same tyres on. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's happened to Justin Barrera, Randall.
I don't know if maybe he's decided to abandon his fuel saving strategy and came in for that extra lap of fuel so that he wouldn't have to save and could push for this final stint, but that would give away all the work that he did in that first stint, essentially just handing a bunch of time to his competitors. You'd have to think that maybe it was a stop and go or a stop and hold for speeding, possibly on pit exit. Maybe just forgot to turn the limiter on or got off of the limiter too soon. That could be what it was. That's a very, we'll have to find out after the race what happened there with Justin Barrera, but that's certainly going to throw a wrench in his strategy.
Oh, Flack has had a little bit of an issue, spinning through what would be, I'm trying to work out what part of the circuit that's a Schumacher S's. I thought it was, but the cones threw me off. So Bobby Flack now having to wait for everybody to make their way past before he can flick spin the car back on to the circuit, which he does fairly nicely. Finds the gravel on the other side of the track for good measure. Well, if you've got a little bit of gravel in the bodywork, why not get it all? Barrera then back out on the circuit, but no threat to this man, Christian Gritzko. 4 seconds separates himself and Aubrey Cundell. Aubrey Cundell, though, has been setting some pretty rapid lap times so far, but just is no match for Gritzko. Gritzko still on the primaries. He's yet to run the alternate tyres. Aubrey Cundell, for that final stint, you would have thought would go on to the primaries, although might be able to do the alternate strategy in the final 2 stops if Cundell so chooses. Brian Long into the pit, so the first of our stoppers for the first round of pit stops becomes the first stopper for the second. I'm just surprised that nobody tried the one-stop strategy. I know, Randall, you were saying, you know, it is the quicker strategy to do 2 stops, but you always tend to get 1 or 2 drivers chancing their arm a little bit, trying the fuel save strategy. And I know Barrera did, and we don't quite know what happened, but I'm surprised that more drivers, certainly after that incident, didn't decide to really try and maximize the fuel saving here today.
Well, we still have Q-Nin out there with a possibility, but he's going to have to save 3 laps of fuel over the length of the stint. We saw that Justin Barrera was able to do it, so it could be possible here, especially on the black sidewalls. They have a lot longer life, and it'll be easier to maintain throughout the run. Though if you're fuel saving, you're going to have problems keeping them fired up. Doesn't really seem like he's doing any fuel saving now, though, so doubtfully going to be on the one-stop strategy. You really needed to split the race in half to have a good shot at the one-stop. So I'm not really surprised that we don't see it. We did see Justin Barrera was doing it, and that penalty or whatever issue he's had is kind of prevented that. But he was definitely on a one-stop strategy. The 2-stop is just so much faster here.
I think I'm just partial to a little bit of a fuel save strategy, and that might be the endurance racer in me sort of seeping out just a little bit. Aubrey Cundell, though, I was catching up to Gritzko, but it's had some not slow laps, but slower than needed laps, and finds himself around 4.5 seconds adrift of the race leader. A little bit of lap traffic up ahead as well. That's Mike Braun up ahead of him. Braun involved, I do believe, in that first lap incident. And we haven't really discussed, you know, some of the drivers caught up. Stevenson, there was another driver who he spun, didn't he, on the exit of turn 4, but they'd just sort of all been lapping away. Nobody retired from the race. In fact, nobody has retired from the race so far. Even Riccardo Serrano, that at one point only had about 1.5 wheels attached to his chassis, is going once again. So we started with 14 drivers, still remained with 14 drivers, and that's really nice to see Randall, even after, you know, a fairly big opening lap incident, everybody still wanting to get to the end here today.
With only having 14 cars on the track, it makes it easy to find your pace and some space and just kind of have a safety bubble and be able to click off laps and try to find your pace. Albert Kendall, though, probably the biggest mover overall in this race, started, I believe, in 8th and has moved his way up to 2nd, started on those black side walls, now on the alternates. And I'm a little surprised we haven't seen him come into the pits. So you may be right. He may be trying to do the double alternate strategy. That could work for him. I still don't think it's as fast as just doing a really short stint on the alternates, but it wouldn't be the first time I was wrong.
Aubrey Kendall very much sent it to the inside through turn 1, took a step back from my monitor. Braun, I think so too, was a little bit surprised, but courteously got out of the way mid-apex, you have to say, to let Kendall go past. So Aubrey Kendall up 5 places from where he started. Joshua Benjamin, the biggest gainer in this race, up 10 spots from where he started 14th, started last, currently runs in 4th place. So, I said that it was an unknown quantity, didn't set a lap time in qualifying. Well, that's where he could have been. So, great race from Joshua Benjamin. Can you go one further, I wonder, and get last to a podium place? You see him rounding turn 6 up towards the hairpin of turn 7. He's got a little bit of lap traffic up ahead of him in Bobby Flack. 5.5 seconds separates himself and Kuhn in. And it's all going to be about that final stop. Who is going to choose the alternates? Who is going to choose the primaries? We're 8 laps away from the end of the race. And the more laps we do in this stint, the more likely it is, isn't it, Randall, that we will see drivers move to the alternates for the final stint, because it is the quicker tyre. And if you only have to do 4, 5, 6 laps on it, well, maybe the high wear isn't as important as it was if it was a longer stint.
And that's exactly what you're going to see out of Christian Gritzko. He could run probably as deep as lap 26 before he pulls into the pits, but we may see him come in on 24 or 25. I would think no earlier than 25. And he's going to have that 4 to 5 lap stint there at the end of the race on the Reds, where he's not going to have to worry about saving them, and he's just going to be able to push them. He only has 1 push to pass remaining, so he probably won't be using that push to pass. He'll probably save it for his end lap, and then he'll have just those 4 or 5 laps on the Reds where he doesn't have to worry. Like I said, doesn't have to worry about saving them. He can just really push him and get the most out of them.
Here is your race leader then. I haven't seen him in a few laps or so. Don't really need to see him. We still know where he is, remains in the same place he was when the cameras last picked him up. First place, 5 seconds, the leading advantage. Gets the car nicely turned in through turn 10, really in control of his car. Disappears slightly. That's a little bit of a worry for Christian Gritzko. I assure you, though, he's still there. He is still lapping, and he's still ferociously quick. Cochrane under pressure from Ricardo Serrano. Primary tyres versus primary tyres. Serrano, though, gets the move done. He cuts across the nose of Barry Cochrane. I do apologise there, Barry. Don't tend to like to see cars sort of cut across, especially into the braking zone. Randall, you tend to just exponentially increase your chance, your risk of being involved in an accident, being rear-ended, because you take all the downforce away from the driver behind you. And well, downforce and late braking, or a lack of downforce and late braking, don't necessarily go together too well. Aubrey Kendall to the pits, though.
You're right. It's a fine line between bravery and regret when you pull a move like that. They were able to get it done this time safely, but I think you're right on Aubrey Kendall. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him come back out on the alternates, pulling the double alternate strategy. So we'll see if he can take anything to Christian Gritzko, who will also be coming out on those alternates.
Aubrey Kendall's advantage is that, well, he's already run the alternates in today's race. He knows how they feel. Gritzko yet to put those red wall tyres on, but Aubrey Kendall long in the pits, still stationary. He only needed 6 laps of fuel. I wonder, has he picked up a penalty? Because surely at this point, Randall, this is not fuel. This is not tyres. This is some other some of the delay, and that's just he's finally on pit exit, and that's ruined what could have been a really intriguing end to the race.
That was almost certainly a penalty. Like I said, the pit entry is one that you can push, but you have to be very careful about how you push it. Christian Grit's going to dip in here now on the end of lap 24, a lap earlier than I thought he would, but he's still only going to have 6 laps to run on those alternates. Still going to be easy to pull off without much fall off. That last lap could be a little bit hairy, but he's going to have a nice, big lead to help him save those tires, so he doesn't necessarily have to go 100% here at the end.
Kunin resists the urge to come in to the pit, so will just about, I think, take the race lead. Gritsko onto the alternate tyres. No surprise there. He's yet to run both compounds. Benjamin goes through as well, and Gritsko will come out in 3rd place. Hotham also makes his way through. Oh, he's round! Was that in the background? It was! Christian Gritsko spears across the track and Long gets past in, what looked like an almost certain win for Christian Gritsko ends in disaster. Is he just going to light the rear tyres up? Yes, he is. And, Randall, absolute heartbreak.
It seems to be the story of the season. We've seen this a few times where the leader comes out of the pits with an easy win lined up and just struggles with the cold tires. I think this just got a lot more interesting for Kunin, especially because that's also going to cause Christian Gritsko to run afoul of the stewards there, crossing that pit exit line. He may have a penalty to serve.
That's a really good point there, and the damage that you might have to the front wing as well. So Kunin looking fairly good for a race win, but Joshua Benjamin, do not count him out, started last in this race. Currently chasing down Kunin. I wonder, is Q going for that fuel saving strategy? I doubt it, but I don't count anything out in the WSRL IndyCar series. Through the final chicane we go. Kunin a little bit deep. Does that give the advantage to Benjamin? He'll send it to the inside. Primaries versus alternate tyres. Benjamin got that tyre advantage, got that grip, and, it's got the position done. Onto the push to pass as well for good measure. And a move through turn 15, Coca-Cola corner. And that was fairly sweet. That was fairly great from Joshua Benjamin. So Benjamin is our new race leader. Benjamin hasn't stopped for the second time, I don't believe. Is dispatched by Christian Gritsko. So Gritsko still out on the circuit. So I wonder if he might have just avoided that penalty, or if he's waiting to serve it. I'm not quite sure, Randall, but if Gritsko doesn't have a penalty to serve, he still, by my quick maths, could be in for the chance of winning, but it's certainly not going to be as straightforward as it was looking a few laps ago.
He does. I've looked at the timing screen now. He has a black flag, so he has a penalty to serve. He may try to stretch that out to as late as possible, but that is definitely going to end his race. Kunin and Josh Benjamin here are in position to fight for this win, and we'll see if fuel strategy comes into play. Was Kunin able to save enough and stay out? That might win him the race. I can't remember which compound that Kunin started on. I want to say it was the alternates, and I think Joshua Benjamin has ran both compounds already, so he'll likely come out on the alternates as well. So we could see a gunfight here right at the very end of the race. Who's better in pit lane, and then who can get those red sidewalls fired up and make the most out of them. As we see Josh Benjamin pulling it now. So all to play for here in the last laps.
Your pole sitter and early doors race leader Brian Long, he's still within a shout of the race win today, even after that spin through turn 1. It's all to play for here. Christian Gritsko going for another lap, so we do believe he's got a penalty. He's going to have to come in this lap to serve it. In fact, he might fall a little bit foul of the stewards as well, because he'll cross the pit end or the start finish line for the 3rd time of asking while he's in the pit lane. So I wonder how the stewards will deem that. And it's always advisable when you've got a black flag just to come into the pits as quickly as possible. Brian Hotham then in 2nd place, starting to catch Kunin. Poor Kunin has been, he's been chased by everybody. It does seem that, you know, Hunin is fuel saving. It does seem to be that he is going for this one-stop strategy. Hotham, though, certainly not by the difference in their braking potential. Well, that was a move done on the outside of the second part of the Schumacher S's. Don't tend to see an overtake there. Great move by Hotham, but I wonder, are we going to see that 13 car Randall pull to pit lane in a few moments' time? Can Kunin really do this on one stop?
It's possible. The amount of time that he's losing doing this fuel saving, he needs to make it work to have a chance to win here. If he has to come in for a splash, there's no way he's going to be close enough to challenge for the win. Brian Hotham showing a lot of pace. He will likely be in at the end of this lap as well. He last pit on lap 15. This will be lap 28, 13 laps of fuel. Pretty easy math. He should be in at the end of this lap. Unless he saved a lot of fuel, but he does not look to be saving fuel at all.
Look behind them, there's a fairly familiar livery of Christian Gritzko. So Gritzko is not pitted. I mean, I don't know. Don't ask me about the technicalities of the rules, because that is far too advanced for my brain. But Christian Gritzko then still out and running. Could still pick up a race win here today. 2 seconds separates himself and Kunin. And if Gritzko does not have to come into the pits, then it is all to play for. But I do believe he's got a penalty, or we believe he's got a penalty, I should say, in the commentary booth. But Hotham, your race leader. Sorry, Randall.
If you ask 5 different iRacers how the penalty system works for drive-throughs and how many laps you have, you're going to get 5 different answers. It's a very not well understood mechanic, and it's different track to track because of where the start-finish line falls compared to the pit entry. It's even I haven't figured out after doing this for 5 or 6 years. I just still don't know. I try not to get penalties. That's the best way to have to avoid learning it and knowing what you need to do. But it happens to all of us. You get a penalty. I agree with you. It's just better and easier just to serve it as quickly as possible. There's times where maybe it's worth staying out, but if you pick up an incidental DQ, it's just not worth it staying out there. See Kunin pulling into the pits now with Christian Gritzko. Christian going to serve that penalty. Kunin not able to stretch it out, so I think his chances at getting a win here are going to be slipping away. Brian Hotham stayed out for another lap, so he's been able to save some fuel. Maybe he's on a fuel-saving strategy suddenly, but I really doubt it with the pace that he was showing. So we should see him go in, and that'll put Brian Long back into the lead, who is now on those red sidewalls. So I think that Brian is going to be good to go for the rest of the race, and he could re-inherit this lead. The fuel strategy that he played by pushing very early and pitting early could have just worked out for him in the long run. But Joshua Benjamin going to be looking to get that position back.
Was it strategy for Long? Was it a little bit of luck with Gritzko making that mistake, and Aubrey Kendall as well, having that long pit stop, taking him out of contention? You mentioned that Kunin and Gritzko both headed to pit lane. Surprisingly, Brian Hotham did not. Sort of the opposite of what I was expecting. I was expecting Kunin to continue on to try and do that one-stop strategy, and Brian Hotham to just not come in to the pits. But Hotham then is your race leader, but the question is, does he have one extra lap of fuel in the tank? We will, well, shortly be heading on to the final lap, the white flag lap, and it's all about, can he get to the end? Does he have enough fuel? Will he have to pull into the pits? Well, there's your answer. Hotham does not pull it into the pit. So, wow, white flag, 1 to go here at the Nurburgring. Can Brian Hotham bring this to a close? He's got a 6.6 second advantage to Long in second. That's a nice buffer. He doesn't really have to worry with any pressure behind. And Long knows he needs to push. There needs to be a qualifying lap, very out for this circuit, a Michael Schumacher-esque qualifying lap. He needs to nail every apex. Randall, do you think Hotham's got enough fuel to get this done?
He certainly believes he does, or else he wouldn't have stayed out. And we've seen it. Oh, Brian Long having issues there at turn 3. Manages to get it back pointed in the right direction without losing too much time. But definitely trying to push that car. We see it all the time in sports car racing, where somebody's pace belies how much fuel they're saving, and they're able to keep a really good pace while fuel saving. So I think maybe that's what happened here with Brian Hotham. I didn't for sure didn't think that he was saving fuel with the pace that he was making his way around the likes of Q-Nin. And now here he is on the white flag lap, having made only one stop and pulled out 15 laps on these alternates.
But he's still got half the circuit to go, and crucially, it's all really full throttle now. Rounds, turns 10 into turn 11. This long back straight. Hotham has not used Eddie push to pass this race. Compared that to Long, who's used 10. Benjamin, who's used 9. Q-Nin, well, he had used 7. He's now used 8. But Hotham has just got the chicane standing in between himself and a race win. And he just needs to make it around turn 15, Coca-Cola corner, and it will be Brian Hotham that crosses the line in the race lead. And Hotham takes a sensational win here today, really clasped at that race win from the straws of defeat. Brian Long crosses the line in second place. Your pole sitter, your race leader at the start, will have to settle for second. And then the biggest gainer in the race, Benjamin, will finish in third as we go to live pictures between Stevenson and Barry Cochran round turn 11. Oh, contact is made and both go off the circuit. And disaster for those two involved. Wasn't turn 11, that was on the exit of turn 7, the hairpin corner. And look at that, Neil Alexander getting involved in a three-way battle. Then, contact once again. Front wings go flying. And Stevenson and Bobby Cochran, Barry Cochran, do apologise once again, makes contact in, well, I think that's Stevenson waiting for Barry to get going. So Stevenson there admitting his part in that incident. Neil Alexander, though, gets the position of both of them and heads up into 12th spot. But wow, today's race was all about Hotham. It was all about the fuel saving strategy. And what a race we had today, Randall.
Really incredible. Your heart goes out to Christian Gritzko as we see Barry Cochran pulling into the pits. Not quite made it to the checkered flag yet, so going to give that spot to Dave Stevenson at the end. I'm not sure what that call was. Maybe he had a penalty to serve from incidents there at the end. As we see Mike Braun trying to limp that IndyCar home. He's got a long way to go. He might have to get out and push.
Unfortunately, not a mechanic in iRacing, the old get out and push, or the old Nigel Mansell approach. And Braun, it's, unluckily for him, it's all uphill through this S's section. Yeah, car really spluttering. His best bet is to, if he's got the starter mapped, is just to run it on the starter. But of course, it's an IndyCar. You don't have a starter. What am I? It's 3 a.m.
I think he's gonna make it. He's gonna make it here. He's gonna make it here. He's carrying 25 miles an hour or so coming out of the hairpin. He's just gonna clutch it in. You hear the engine go silent. He's gonna make it.
Wow, it's been an action-packed race, and the best way to close. Will Mike Braun, of course, a commentator here at Slow Motion Broadcasting, will he make it across the line? 18 miles an hour of pace, 17 now. He's in third gear.
And across the line.
Flag. Oh no, it's not the checkered flag. Oh no, he's mistaken the finish line.
I'm pretty sure it's that earlier one.
No, it's the later one. That's the earlier checkered flag for the Nordschleife, the VLN layout. It's actually the start finish line. So Mike Braun is showing on our timing screens as out and not finished. So, Mike, little bit too quick to finish. Here though are your race results. Brian Hotham, your race winner. 8.2 seconds separates himself from Brian Long, who finished in second. Joshua Benjamin rounding out your podium places. Q-Nin finishing fourth. Aubrey Condell in fifth. Christian Gritzko finishing in sixth. Justin Barrera in seventh. Mike Weir eighth. Mike Braun in ninth, and Bobby Flack rounding out your top 10. Ricardo Serrano finishes 11th. And Alexander in 12th. David Stevenson 13th, and Barry Cochran your 14th and final driver. And well, talking about our race winner, Brian Hotham, might be able to have a little bit of a chat to him.
Yeah.
And sorry, Brian, for interrupting your conversation. Welcome to the commentary booth. And well, that was a fairly exciting final stint. I'm not quite sure if you thought that you were going to be able to get the race win today, but a great strategy. The only driver to finish on one stop. Looked like a lot of fun out there.
Yeah, it was a blast, and I definitely, as people were catching me from behind and then came into the pits, I know Q was one of them. Those last couple laps, I was able to relax a little bit, but the tires were cooked at the end. There wasn't anything left.
I can imagine. What was it? It was what, 17 laps on that set in the end.
I think maybe 16. I'm not sure. It's something like that. It was, yeah, the Reds. I don't think they were meant to go that long, but I had to. Through the slow sections, especially, was pushing. It was painful.
I can imagine. Was it always your intention to do the one stop, or did the race develop it in that way?
I went in wanting to do the one stop. That's why I started on black. So if I felt like it wasn't going to work, I could abandon it about halfway through. If I could make lap 15, even then I could still abandon it, but I stuck with it, and it worked out for me. It
did. 8 seconds over Brian Long in the end, up 7 places. Really good race from yourself. We have a week's break now. Of course, it's Thanksgiving in the US. Before we head to Sebring, you feeling confident about Sebring? Do you think you can bring home this championship?
I hope so. I'm just gonna run my race and do my best. It's technically my home track, so I love Sebring. You're not typically running it in an IndyCar, but I think it'll still be good fun.
Well, home race to end out the season, maybe to get the championship as well. Well, congratulations, Brian, on your race today. It was really enjoyable to watch. Before we let you go and celebrate, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to at all?
Sure, as always, slow motion broadcasting. I don't know if you guys are sick of talking to me yet, but I'm not sick of talking to you, that's for sure. And my girlfriend and I found out this week we're having a baby boy in May, so shout out to them.
Well, congratulations, Brian. That is the best news in, well, just to top it off, a race win as well. But I'm sure the other news is slightly more important.
Thank you.
That was Brian Hotham, your overall race winner. Randall, managed to find any drivers at all?
Yes, I have. I have our pole sitter and second place finisher, Brian Long. Brian, that first stint, you ran a very short stint on the Reds, and you used all 10 of your push-to-pass opportunities on that first stint. Was that the plan? Were you trying to pressure Christian into a mistake?
Yeah, I'd kind of practiced it before the race. I was hoping to. I knew on the Reds, they weren't going to last very long before they fell off, and I thought, all right, if I can just get 3 or 4 really quick laps out of them, I can do the rest of the race on blacks. But it doesn't matter because Hotham had the strategy, man. That fuel save was. I knew I was done. I'm 15. I saw he didn't pit, and I was like, oh, not catching this guy. I will see at the end. It was fun.
So there was you did have a couple mistakes out there that may have made that gap a little bit smaller. So I think you were on a pretty good strategy there. Tell us what it was like in the middle stints of the race where everybody was pitting around you and you were mired back in the middle of the pack, and you knew that in the end it was going to play out.
It was just kind of getting into a rhythm. It was the middle of the race, and I knew that I wasn't going to know really where I stood until about 3 or 4 to go. So I was just trying to get a good average lap time on the black tires. I did have that one little slide out at turn 1, which I think cost me a couple seconds. But luckily, the 2 mistakes I did have, the one was on the second to last lap, I think, which at that point I had 6 seconds to go with Hotham still, and then the other one. I don't know if it would have been enough, even if I hadn't done it, but it was a lot of fun there, like you said, waiting to see how it all played out. And I think there was probably 6 or 7 of us fighting for podiums there by the last 3 laps, so it was really cool.
So as you came out on the first lap, pulled out of the Mercedes arena, there was a big incident behind you. Did you get a good view of that in your mirror, and did that put a big grin on your face, knowing that you suddenly had a gap that wasn't there before?
No, because Christian was still behind me, so I didn't see quite what happened. I just saw smoke, and all I was trying to tell myself was don't spin, don't spin, don't spin. It was first lap on the Reds, and I just, it's so easy to slide out on that track. The back end's always trying to get away from you. And it was, and so my whole thought was I need to get ahead of Christian as far as I can on the first couple laps.
Well, it seems like your strategy using the push to pass early to push on that opening stint worked out, and that it caused Christian to have a mistake trying to keep up with you. Is there anybody you'd like to thank or shout out after your P2 finish here?
Yeah, shout out to Dre DVAC just for letting us host this series in the WSRL and taking me on to the Wrong Stuff racing team. It's been a blast. So thank you to him for allowing me to set it up, and then Mike Weir as well, the other IndyCar admin, getting all of our logos and helping us get the season all set up. So, and then thank you to you guys too for doing the broadcast every week. It's been a blast. Even though I can't make every race, it's been really, really fun to watch. So, and then thanks to my family, who I think a few are probably watching. So thanks guys for coming to watch.
All right, Brian. Well, congratulations on P2, and have a good night.
Thanks guys. You too.
That was your P2 finisher, Brian Long, and Seb, I think you have our P3 finisher queued in.
I do have our third place finisher, but I do believe it's Joshua Benjamin in third place. So what I'll do is we'll do the old switcheroo in the commentary booth. Joshua, wow, that was a good race from yourself. Started, I do believe, last, up into third. That was a pretty good race from yourself.
Can't complain. Feels pretty good about it.
I can imagine that was pretty good. When you're lining up 14th, did you expect to be on the podium?
Not on the podium, not at all. But after that pile up at the start, I knew I had a decent chance for a decent finish, at least top 5.
And what was your strategy today? Was your plan to try and do the one stop, or did you think that the two stop was just the strategy to be on?
Honestly, the tires, both sets of tires felt like they were falling off real quick, so I just ran 2 sets of reds and saved tires the whole time.
Interesting. Of course, it's such a high-speed circuit here, and it's not a typical circuit that we have in the or the IndyCars run on. Are you a fan of the Nurburgring and the IndyCar?
A lot of fun. A lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. 1 week break, and then we head to Sebring. Are you going to be? Are you looking forward to that to finish off the season?
Yeah, Sebring. Yeah. Nah, not at all. Me and Sebring don't get along very well.
Well, I was going to say at least, yeah. No, it's a track that drivers either love or hate, and I think there's equal measures of that on this grid. Well, Joshua, it was a pleasure watching you out on the circuit today. Before we let you go and celebrate your podium, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to at all?
Mommy, I love you. Thanks, guys. You guys are holding a good show. I love it.
Thank you very much, Joshua. And once again, congratulations on your podium place. As I mentioned, there was Joshua Benjamin. Randall, I think we might be able to bring Cued in our 4th place finisher for a quick chat.
Q, it looked like you were on a fuel-saving strategy there until the very end of the race, and you came in with a couple laps to go from the lead. How short were you?
Yeah, I was about a lap or 2 short. In the beginning of the race, I actually thought that I was supposed to do 8 laps, and then when I looked down, I saw 30 laps in total. So that was like halfway through the first stint, so it was already too late for me to do a save. But no, I tried to make it. Almost made it.
So there was a lot of action out there on the track tonight. It looked like you got through that opening skirmish pretty clean. Tell us what the race was like for you.
After seeing that incident, I didn't know where he went. Like, he disappeared in front of the car that was in front of me. I guess I would have to say pretty lucky, because throughout this whole season, haven't been really doing that good. And I don't know, I'm pretty new to the Indy, so I'm happy that I was able to keep the car on the track.
Well, overall, you had a pretty good race, and you did finish where you qualified, which is a bit of a misnomer with the kind of race that you had. So before we let you go, is there anybody that can thank or shout out?
Yeah, I want to thank you guys for broadcasting the show. I watch it every time after I get done racing. TWSRL guys, my wonderful girlfriend for supporting me. You congratulate Brad Popham for finishing in 1st place.
That was your 4th place finisher, Q Nin, who had a pretty decent race. He started 4th, finished 4th, but he was really a contender there at the end of the race. Thought he was going to maybe pull out a win.
Cases where the stat book lies a little bit because it will show that he started in 4th and finished in 4th, but does not show the story of his race. Well, how do you sum up the round 7 at the Nurburgring, Randall? Really intriguing, in my opinion, at least.
It's one of the things that I've been saying all season. It's very easy to go fast in this car. It's very difficult to go fast over a complete race distance. You can get caught out in so many ways. Cold tires on this car can really ruin your race, as we saw with Christian Gritzko. Another snake bit leader. A technical track. I knew this would deliver some good strategy, just the nature of this track, and I'm jealous I didn't get to go out there and drive with him.
Wow. That is all we have time for here today. Just enough time to tell you about our upcoming broadcast for this weekend. And we've only got one for the next week, in fact. And that will be Sunday, 8 p.m. EST, where XSLR will return for one final time this season from the World Horse Pass Circuit. Do join us then. It should be an amazing spectacle of racing to round out what has been a thoroughly enjoyable season of racing. And then, well, if you want some more IndyCar action, as I said, to our drivers will be off next week because of Thanksgiving. So in 2 weeks' time, we will return for the final round 1 last gasp of this championship. What an enthralling first season we have had. But until then, my name has been Sebastian Boscher-Williams. I've been joined in the commentary booth by Randall McGrew, and in the production trailer, once again, we have had Dustin Ollis. So thank you all so much for joining, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time as the championship heads to Sebring.